Good morning, everyone. Hello, wonderful people on Zoom. I hope you're nice and warm and cozy. So good to see you. And thank you to those people that have come out and are in this space, adding their energy in that way. So I would like to invite Doug to start off the announcements.
Our annual general meeting will be on Sunday, March 5th, the first Sunday in March. It'll start at 11:30 immediately following the service. And we are working on the weather for that day.
And another opportunity, we're preparing for worship right now, but if Forest Church is your thing, if you think about the environment and God's creation, and you would like an opportunity to connect in that way, this afternoon at 2 o'clock in Phyllis Rawlinson's Park, that the Forest Church group will meet. And if you want to know more about that, Paula's going to wave at you now. She can tell you all about that ministry. And thank you so much for those people that have signed up for the Sunday morning coffee time. That will start next week, the first and third Sunday of the month. We will be serving coffee, and we are very grateful to all of those pairs for that. If you're really into coffee, then come on Thursday morning for the drop-in at 10:30. The staff are available and other people drop in for a time of conversation and connection. So please come and be a part of that. So let us take a deep breath. Just pause for a moment to consider why we are here. And to help us with that, Nadine and Barry are going to help us to center with a piece of music. And let us light our community candles, beginning with the candle of reconciliation that is lighting a path to healing and to mending broken covenants. And lighting the candle of our faith in Jesus. Jesus, the radical, the one who teaches us how to live love in the world. And this wonderful bright colored candle of affirmation, a light that reminds us to draw the circle wide, that says that every single person is welcome in this place. And so we remember, since time immemorial, First Nations people have both a physical but also a spiritual presence and connection to the earth. And this is based on respect and gratitude. And as we think about how the earth is warming and how the waters are rising, it is in many places around the world, Indigenous communities that are at the forefront of the climate crisis. And so may we hear their cries for justice. May we feel the groans of the earth. And in this moment, let's commit to joining with all creation to work for healing. So I invite you to join your voices with mine in the call to worship. Gathered together. Here we are, so ordinary, so unique. Here we are, so simple, so complex. Gathered together, we hold smiles and heartaches. We are bundles of cherished memories and thorny hurts. We seek the shining face of God. We long to be wrapped in healing shadow. We venture to become whole. And as we continue in prayer, let us remember that inside each of us, there awaits a wonder-filled spirit of freedom, a freedom that wants to dance in the cluttered rooms of our hearts, in the spaces where negative feelings lurk, in the corners where we still don't believe in our own goodness. Inside each of us, you tell us, oh God, there awaits a spirit-filled sense of wonder and freedom, waiting to dance and sing glad songs within us. May it be so. Amen. So let us sing a hymn about that healing process. It's Voices United 619, Healer of Our Every Ill. I'm going to set the context for our ancient stories this morning. We are going to be dipping into both Hebrew and Christian scriptures. And the story of Moses receiving the Ten Commandments actually links, in my mind anyway, to the background of a Jesus story, the Transfiguration. I don't think it's any accident that the account of the Transfiguration takes place on a high mountain, just as Moses' encounter with God took place on Mount Sinai. And we're going to hear both of those passages about bright, shining moments. But they take place within a context that includes many challenges. So what was happening? What was going on for Moses? Well, Moses was having to listen to the moaning and complaining and grumbling of the people of Israel. They were traveling through a harsh desert climate. That isn't any fun, particularly when you're short of water and food. There were a whole lot of disputes to settle. And the people's faith in God was wavering. And there were many threats, not just the threat of the Egyptian army and snakes. There were all sorts of things that were happening within the community. And what about Jesus? I keep on saying that Jesus lived in very tough political times. Jesus lived under the cruel oppression of the Roman Empire. And the people at the time were looking for a way out. They were looking for a leader, somebody that would overthrow Rome and restore Israel's fortunes. But Jesus spoke very differently. We hear on the Sermon of the Mount about loving your enemies, about blessing those who persecute you, about turning the other cheek. So I'm going to invite Susan to come up now. Susan is going to read those two passages that are bright, shining moments, but remember the context, which was very challenging.
From Exodus. Moses came down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant in his hand. Moses did not know that the skin on his face shone because he had been talking with God. When Aaron and the Israelites saw the skin on his face shining, they were afraid to come near. But Moses called to them. Aaron and the leaders came first, and afterward all the Israelites came near. So he gave them in commandment all that the Lord had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. And from Matthew, Jesus took Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain. There he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah, talking with Jesus. Then a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice came, "This is my son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him."
And the choir, accompanied by Nadine, are going to share an anthem that continues to explore this theme. It's called Walk in the Light. And listen for these phrases. And we shall study war no more, and walk the path of peace. Come, O people, O come and walk in the light of the Lord. So bright, shining faces. Faces glowing with health and youthful sparkle are much sought after amongst some of us who have hit a certain age. It seems like that wrinkled-free, just scrubbed appearance that perhaps we did have in our teens is longed for still in middle age. Well, good luck with that. Now, Moses was probably not at all concerned about his appearance. That probably wasn't a thing for him. And as he was walking down the mountain after being in the presence of God, I can just imagine all the thoughts and feelings that were swirling around for him. And it seems from the story that he was unaware of his shiny face. He was unaware that he looked different and people were afraid. Now, it might sound kind of odd to be concerned or afraid of a shiny face, but perhaps it was more that the people could see that he was changed. He was transformed in some way. And they didn't know what had happened. And often when we don't know what has happened, we fill in the gaps, usually with something negative. And the writer of Matthew, I think, knew that story of Moses. And he is building on that imagery when he describes Jesus's mountaintop experience. And I bet each one of us can think about times when we have noticed people looking different. I'm talking about looking different from a positive experience, something that has changed in their lives, perhaps falling in love, the birth of a child, perhaps hearing some beautiful music. And we are changed by that experience. And I think about those people who are making a difference in the world, particularly the young climate activists that are doing so with so much passion and determination on their faces. There were photographs across social media, I think it was even in the Star, of Greta Thunberg, Vanessa Nakiti, Helena Gulinga, Louisa Niembar, 4 young climate activists, and their passion shone in their faces. They were at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, and they were calling for a halt to new oil and gas projects around the world. And their determination and passion shone through. And what we have been doing in these last few weeks is exploring the various aspects of dark and light, shadow and light, and setting the context for these 2 biblical stories. I was trying to show you the challenges that were going on in the midst of Jesus and Moses having that bright, shining moments. And we're going to continue to explore that idea of shadow and light and how both are needed in the world. And I am going to borrow unashamedly from Bruce Cockburn, particularly from Bruce Cockburn's spiritual journey. And it's one that he shares through his songwriting over the decades. And he uses that dark light imagery many, many, many times. And I'd like to kind of set the scene. I'd like you to listen to a piece of Bruce's music. This is something that he wrote more recently, 2017. It's called States I'm In. It's really about looking back to all the things that have happened in his life. And it starts with these words: seeing rose gold haze at the end of the day, ragged-winged hawk swooping down on prey, curtain going up, and the nighttime shadow play. So this is a piece that is performed by Steve Cook, John Doyle, Ed Romanak, and Andrew Harrison. And I invite you to listen to this piece of music and think about what it brings to mind for you.
Gold haze at the end of the day, ragged-winged hawks swooping down on prey, curtain going up on the nighttime shadow play. Seen the sun going down, set the sea on fire, black smoke boiling from burning ties, bones in the mud, was the blood sacrifice required? Ooh-wee, all the sights I've seen in the depths of the world and the heart of a dream. Ooh-wee, all the places I've been, each one reflected in the states I'm in. States I'm in. One day fit and one day fat, one day flush and one day flat, reality distorted like a sat-on hat. One day I feel like I'm in control, next I'm suspended in a bottomless hole, a drunk trying to shinny up a greased pole. Ooh-wee, all the sights I've seen in the depths of the world and the heart of a dream. Ooh-wee, all the places I've been, each one reflected in the states I'm in. States I'm in. I'm slick as a dealer in a green eye shade, aces up his sleeve and he's not afraid. The mayor and his uniform monkeys have been well paid, climbing up the ivy to the balcony above, where pines the heart of my one true love. Obsession, delusion, all that waits is the fateful shove. Ooh-wee, all the sights I've seen in the depths of the world and the heart of a dream. Ooh-wee, all the places I've been, each one reflected in the states I'm in. States I'm in. Crows in the treetop, motors in the road, structures of darkness that the dawn corrodes, into the title montage of a new episode. The whisper wells up from the deeps untrod, overflows his channel and spreads abroad, gathers in power like a lightning rod. Ooh-wee, all the sights I've seen in the depths of the world and the heart of a dream. Ooh-wee, all the places I've been, each one reflected in the states I'm in. States I'm in. Ooh-wee, all the sights I've seen in the depths of the world and the heart of a dream. Ooh-wee, all the places I've been, each one reflected in the states I'm in. States I'm in.
I'm grateful for those musicians to be able to give you a sense of Bruce Coburn's music without infringing copyright and all of those other things that we can't do when we are broadcasting. So that is fantastic. Bruce Coburn's music is deeply informed by the Christian story. And in the 80s, his music took a global and political turn. And what he does is explore the intersection between faith and politics and things that are going on in the world. And Coburn's worldview is shaped by his exploration of the Christian faith. He was brought up in Ottawa, in a United Church in Ottawa, and throughout his whole life, he has been exploring what it means to live as a Christian in the world, and he is still an active part of a faith community in the States today. So what does worldview mean? You know, it's about those questions that we ask ourselves, those sometimes imponderable questions, you know, what is this world that we find ourselves in? What does it mean to be human in the world today? What is the source of all the violence and brokenness and hatred? And perhaps for me, most importantly, and how do we get to a place of healing? And sometimes we forget that every single writer in the biblical canon had a worldview. They are writing and were shaped by their worldview. And today's passages were shaped by living in exile, basically being oppressed is the overall situation. And oftentimes those kind of situations are described with darkness and shadow imagery. And Bruce Coburn doesn't ignore those challenging situations when he is thinking about what's going on in the world. He calls it pacing the cage when he is thinking about what is happening in this world. And he tries, and usually does, come to a place of hope. And those of you that know Bruce's music, you might be thinking, okay, so what about if I had a rocket launcher? So what's the context for that song about just horrific things that were happening? So Bruce was working with refugees around the world, and he was going to Mexico to be present with Guatemalan refugees that had escaped the atrocities that were happening in their country. And before he arrived, there was a rocket attack by military helicopters. And after he left, there was another attack. This regime was supported by the US. And out of that, there came a song where he's just trying to grapple with, okay, sometimes the world just seems hopeless. He acknowledges that I don't believe in guarded borders, and I don't believe in hate. I don't believe in generals and the stinking torture states. And when I talk to survivors of things too sickening to relate, if I had a rocket launcher, I would retaliate. That holds the tension and the pain that he experienced. But on the whole, what Coburn tries to do is, yes, face the reality and point to places of hope. And that always is how we can change, how we can do things differently, how we can live in relationships very differently, how we can be at home in the darkness and yet be hungry for the dawn. And at times we need to kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight. So what about all of us right here, right now? What is weighing heavily on you? What is weighing heavily in your heart? Might it be some personal situation? Perhaps the climate crisis? The increased violence on the streets of our cities and in the transit systems? The overloaded healthcare? There is so much that weighs heavily on our hearts. And coming to another song of Bruce's, this was in response many decades ago to the war in Cambodia, but he writes these words: the this, whatever the this is for all of you. This is too big for anger. It's too big for blame. We stumble through history so humanly lame. So I bow down my head. I say a prayer for us all that we don't fear the Spirit when it comes to call. The prayer is that we don't fear the Spirit when it comes to call. There's no question about the Spirit being in the world and present for each one of us. It's how we connect to it and respond. And sometimes being open to the Spirit will take us down roads that go through dark places. But we need to remember that sometimes the darkness can be our friend. Being open to the Spirit, even when sunset is an angel weeping, holding out a bloody sword. And our job is to work out what it's pointing towards and what we can do to change that situation. And in the story of the transfiguration of Jesus, right at the end, we hear those powerful words: "This is my Son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Listen. About how we make peace, about how we build bridges of connection and compassion that need us to be aware of both the light and the darkness. The light of understanding and compassion, the lengthening shadows that give us that time and opportunity to ponder and reflect. light and shadow crumple together, the place where love is hallowed. Daylight or darkness, both are centered in the Holy One. So I invite you to join in with a piece of music, a hymn that is More Voices 28, that speaks about the actionable pieces that we need to be a part of to be light and healing shadow in the world. This hymn is called God of the Bible. We've come to the point in our worship where we offer everything that we have. Let's just think about that for a moment as the welcome team are getting ready to pass the plates here in the sanctuary. As in your own homes, you think about what you have to offer to Richmond Hill United Church and to the whole world, how you might have a bright, shining face. What is it that might transform you and others and bring about justice in the world? So as you're thinking about that, the offering will be taken and Barry will noodle away. I invite Doug to come and lead us in prayer.
Brothers and sisters in Christ, let us prepare ourselves in body, mind, and spirit to feel genuinely all that we are carrying today, all the joys and troubles of the week in our lives, in the lives of those close around us, and in the lives of so many we don't know and will never meet. God of joys and accomplishments, we lift up in prayer our thanksgiving for milestones, employment gained, housing found, quarrels resolved, anniversaries marked. We celebrate signs of hope in the wider world around us, especially where it's hard to move forward. The new solar energy project in Alberta, where the percentage of renewables in electrical generation has gone from less than 3% to more than 14% in 20 years. An agreement between the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia and the province to share governance of a parcel of wilderness in Cape Breton. An agreement in BC between government, Indigenous groups, and a forestry company to protect a sensitive area larger than the city of Toronto. For all of these blessings, big and small, and the many known only to ourselves, bountiful God, we raise a prayer of gratitude. God of our longings and fears, we also lift up in prayer our concerns for ourselves and for our fragile world. We marked International Holocaust Remembrance Day this week and felt the painful reminders that the task of fighting against hatred and violence never ends. In Memphis, in Ukraine, in the further exclusion from public life of women in Afghanistan, and even on the TTC. Compassionate God, we also lift up in prayer people we know who are ill and those who care for them, and those who have lost a loved one, a relationship, a job, or a home. Finally, we come to unburden ourselves, to leave behind in prayer those things we cannot change, and those things we can, but from which we need a rest. In silence now, we lift up the people and places in our hearts in need of your healing presence. Constant and present God, as we move forward into the next week, keep us in mind that we are not alone, neither in our rejoicing nor in our despair, that we are not alone in our determination to make this a better world, and that you are present with us all the time. Now let's say together the paraphrase of the prayer of Jesus on your screen. Father and Mother of the cosmos, focus your light within us. Create your reign of unity now as your desire acts with ours. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight. Loosen the cords of mistakes which bind us as we release the strands we hold of others' guilt. Don't let superficial concerns delude us, but free us from what holds us back. From you is born all creative will, the power of life, the song that beautifies, renewed from age to age. Amen.
Our next hymn is from another Canadian songwriter, Caroline McDade. So let us join together in singing, I See a New Heaven. And So I hope that we can remember and live out that this vision of justice, this new heaven, this new earth is for all people. All people. And that is what we are called to be about in our ministry. So live that change in the world this week, however that might be for you. Remember the importance of a smile. Remember that you are God's light and nurturing shadow in this world. And let us sing our blessing. And let us receive the postlude from Barry.